When we think of warp speed goals in the Star Trek universe, we always think of the NX-01 Enterprise, the first Warp 5 starship of human design. But what about the speeds beforehand? Well, of course, we had the Phoenix breaking the warp barrier, then the NX Alpha breaking the warp 2 barrier, the NX Delta breaking the warp 3 barrier, but what about warp 4? The warp 4 barrier was all to do with the USS Franklin, the same ship we see in Star Trek Beyond. Today, we explore the Freedom class and the USS Franklin in Star Trek Explained. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host Captain Jack, and let's get into it. Before we warp into this video, if you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. Did you know that you can now follow Trek Central on BlueSky and Threads? Like Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, you can now also get your breaking Star Trek news on these new platforms as well. Join us today, the links are down below. While you're watching this video, I do have a question for you. I have always thought that instead of a Freedom class, Star Trek Beyond should have used an NX class of ship. Now that would have been cool and also a great callback to Star Trek Enterprise for the movie. What do you think? While watching, comment your thoughts down below. Okay, let's go. We all love Star Trek comics, right? Of course we do. Well, now you can get over £350 worth of Star Trek comics for under £20. That's crazy. Fanatical has sponsored this video so we can tell you about their Star Trek Across the Universe comics bundle. We also have a giveaway, stay tuned. Fanatical's FantasyVerse have teamed up with IDW Entertainment to offer a Star Trek bundle of 50 products for the epic price of $18.55. The best thing? There are 4 tiers. Starting with tier 1 at just 95p, which contains 4 comics, including the Manifest Destiny storyline. From there, tier 2 is $7.55 with 11 products and features all the previous tier comics, something each tier does. This includes the Godshot comic book, which features Captain Benjamin Sisko. Tier 3 is priced at $11.30 and contains one of my personal favourite Star Trek comics. This is Star Trek Picard Countdown. It's a prequel comic adventure to the Star Trek Picard series with Sir Patrick Stewart. I love this as it features one of my favourite Starship classes, the Odyssey class. Definitely worth a read. Finally, Tier 4 features a massive 50 products at the Galaxy class price of $18.55. Some comics here include Star Trek Year 4, the previous edition of this one, Hive, which is a Borg adventure of 7 of 9, Picard, Mirror Universe Adventures, Strange New Worlds, and much more. Easily a fantastic value for money. Now act fast, as this bundle is limited edition and only available for a select amount of time. The clock's already started, make it so. However, great news. We're doing a giveaway in collaboration with Fanatical's FantasyVerse. Now, to celebrate the Star Trek Across the Universe comics bundle, we're giving away one Star Trek comic bundle, which contains 50 issues of epic Star Trek adventures, one additional bundle of your choice from the FantasyVerse lineup, and a $20 store voucher to spend on the Fanatical website. What are you waiting for? Get ready to enter. Now to enter, simply click the link in the video description and set a course. For the full collection, you can also check out the bundle on the FantasyVerse website linked below. What are you waiting for? Make it so. At a presumed length of 137 meters, the Freedom class is a relatively small starship design. The overall design of a Freedom class hull features a saucer-shaped living and command section, something would later come to be symbolic of Starfleet's starship design. This section contains all the controls for the ship's functions, along with the living quarters and command and control locations. 2 impulse drive engines were positioned aft of the ship, facing aft, on either side of a large indent into the saucer section. From there, 2 warp nacelles were positioned on 2 pylons, stretching back a little outwards from the ship. These house warp engines. The Freedom class was capable of reaching warp 4 around the 2140s, with the USS Franklin being the first ship designed to do so. It's unclear if there was a test project to allow for warp 4, in a similar way the NX project used the Alpha, Beta, Delta and presumably Gamma to test the warp 5 engine. While later Starfleet ships will be built on planet-side shipyards as well as being designed to enter the atmosphere, the Freedom class did not do so. The class was to be built in space and not designed for atmospheric entry. However, with that said, the Freedom class can sustain both being crash-landed onto a planet and launching from a planet via reaching terminal velocity, in which case the stabilizers would be initiated for a liftoff. Weapons-wise, the ship had a light armament. It was armed with pulsed phase cannons and spatial torpedoes. In terms of defense systems, it featured polarized hull plating. Both defense and offensive systems would later be found on the successor NX class line of ships. A Freedom class typically includes a complement of shuttle pods. We can presume that these would either be the same class as the ones found on the NX-01 Enterprise or a predecessor model. The bridge of the Freedom class was located at the top center of the saucer section, in keeping with Starfleet design that would come to be. It contained all of the command and control functions. There was a central seat for the ship's commanding officer and chairs for the helmsman. Stations were also present for comms, science, engineering, and also others were spread around the room. The bridge also featured a view screen that was a transparent window, but did have the technology for technical information to be displayed on it. After the bridge was the transporter room. This was an open semicircular chamber facing the entrance door. Due to controversy over transporter use at the time the Freedom class was launched, it meant the technology was only intended to be used for cargo transport. However, modifying the USS Franklin's transporter systems to allow humans to be transported was not too difficult to do. The lower decks of the Freedom class design featured rooms such as a mess hall, along with main engineering, which is rather tiny and where the warp core is located. A cargo bay was also on board, next was a set of officers' quarters. It would seem the Freedom class had around 3 decks based on the technical information at hand. The Freedom class is presumed to have been superseded by the NX class of starships, which were humanity's first Warp 5 starship line launched in 2151 with the NX-1 Enterprise. As humanity's first Warp 4 starship, the NX Franklin, a Freedom class starship design was launched somewhere between 2145 and 2151. We don't know much about the early days of the Franklin. However, with the launch of the NX-1 Enterprise as humanity's first Warp 5 starship in 2151, we can presume the Franklin would have been relegated to defense of Earth and shipping lanes. With the end of the Earth-Romulan War in 2160 and the formation of the United Federation of Planets in 2161, the Franklin would receive a new dedication plaque and be placed under the command of Captain Balthazar Edison. He was a former military assault command officer, a Mako, and a veteran of both the Xindi conflict and the Romulan War. The USS Franklin would go on many missions for the newly formed Federation for the next 4 years. However, the ship vanished in 2164 during a mission to the Gagarin radiation belt. It was an incident that would be taught to future Starfleet officers at Starfleet Academy. The disappearance of the Franklin caused much speculation in the Federation. Some theories ranged from surrendering to the Romulans or even being captured by a giant green hand. In reality, however, the USS Franklin had seemingly entered a wormhole and was displaced over space. It eventually crashed and landed on the planet of Ultimate. With no sign of rescue from the Federation, Captain Edison believed that the Federation had deliberately abandoned them on this harsh planet. In finally venturing out to their new world, Edison and his crew found relics left behind by the original native species of Ultimate. These relics included numerous starships, a drone workforce, and life-sustaining technology. This technology was capable of stealing the life force from its victims. Captain Edison and his crew would later abandon the wreck of the Franklin and turn their backs on the Federation. It was later revealed in Star Trek Beyond that the technology allowed the surviving crew, including Captain Edison, to capture passing alien ships and drain their crews of life to survive. This, in turn, mutated the biology of the original crew to resemble that of their victims. In time, Edison became known as a Warlord Krall. The changes were so distinct that much of his human identity was erased, along with the ability to speak English. By the year 2263, Jayler discovered the USS Franklin half buried under the surface of Ultimate in the alternative reality known as the Kelvin Timeline. She then placed it under a holographic cloaking device and used the abandoned starship as a residence. Even after around 100 years, the Franklin still had active power reserves, serviceable engines, and intact data logs. Before her encounter with the late Starship USS Enterprise crew, Jayler had begun repairs on the Franklin, learning English from its onboard computer and becoming familiar with the classical music of 20th century Earth stored in the ship's databanks.
I like the beats and shouting.
Well, you do.
After being stranded on Ultimate, following the destruction of the USS Enterprise via an attack from Krall and his swarm ships, Captain James C. Kirk, Commander Spock, Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott, and Ensign Pavel Chekhov would repair the Franklin and restore its transporter capabilities. Scotty also enhanced it to transport complex life forms rather than simple cargo, which it was initially designed for. The team would soon rescue the rest of the Enterprise crew from Krall, while also learning about Krall's plans to use his drone force and swarm ships, along with a super weapon as Yabonov, to attack the Federation's starbase Yorktown. Captain Kirk and the crew successfully piloted the Franklin out of Ultimate's atmosphere, via dropping the ship off a cliff in order to reach terminal velocity. Now under Captain Kirk's command, the Franklin caught up with Krall's forces at Yorktown. Kirk and crew piloted the Franklin into the swarm of ships and used outdated ship technology to disrupt the individual vessels' communications. This was done so by using old radio signals to create a chain reaction that destroyed most of the swarm ships.
Is that classical music?
Yes, Doctor, it would seem to be.
As Krall escaped into Yorktown Starbase, Kirk and the Franklin pursued Krall and the remaining 2 ships. The Enterprise crew piloted the Franklin into the internal decking structure and used the ship itself to destroy the attacking vessels, just before crash landing into the Yorktown Station Central Plaza, near the headquarters building. In a desperate fight, Captain Kirk tracked down Krall and defeated him, stopping the use of a super weapon. Following the incident, Captain Kirk and Commodore Paris officially closed a missing in action report on the USS Franklin and its crew. In terms of known Freedom-class starships, we only know the USS Franklin, as seen in Star Trek Beyond. Given the NX-class launched in 2151, and Starfleet proceeded to then push forward with the NX-02, and then also ordered the NX-03 and 04, it is likely that the additional Freedom-class ships were no longer commissioned by Starfleet, instead favouring the more advanced NX-class of ships. The Franklin would have likely remained in service due to the losses Starfleet faced following the Earth-Romulan War between 2156 and 2160. As such, they would need warp-capable ships to continue exploration missions and defend the newly created United Federation of Planets in 2161. The Freedom-class USS Franklin makes its debut appearance in Star Trek Beyond, a Kelvin Timeline film directed by Justin Lin. He felt that including a pre-Federation ship in the film satisfied a goal he had. This was for the movie to explore and also embrace everything in the Star Trek canon. Lin also believed that the Franklin seemed to serve as the film's plot and themes. Looking back at it, he noted the concept felt organic. The creative team of the Beyond film seemed to really love the idea. In the movie, the survivors of the Kelvin Enterprise are under the impression that they are the first humans on the planet of Ultimid. However, there is some antiquated Federation technology elsewhere on the planet which would prove otherwise. Deciding to include a vehicle such as the Franklin in the Beyond movie then presented a challenge. Screenwriter Doug Jung explained the team took a lot of care to ensure that there were specific details about what kind of ship this would be and what it could do so it would fit properly into the Star Trek timeline. Initially, the vessel was different to how it would look in the finished film. Supervising art director Don McCauley mentioned that originally the USS Franklin only had a small role in the movie when it started. It seemed the ship was originally planned to be called the Pioneer. The original script also saw the Franklin as a much smaller ship, buried in the sand of a desert which would then be discovered by Scotty. Once Kirk and the rest of his team had rescued the other members of the Enterprise crew, the screenplay called for them to somehow get on board the craft. The script also made it clear the vessel was relatively old as a Starfleet ship that could withstand an extreme beating, but had also been lost on the planet for quite some time. As new versions of the Star Trek Beyond script were drafted, the ship's role grew more and more. Designer Sean Hargreaves created the USS Pioneer, which would later be called the Franklin, and also envisioned it as a large shuttlecraft. By the time concept art was produced, the design had changed to that of a freighter. Hargreaves would create some images showing a Pioneer under the sand. In another early concept of a vessel, it bore the name USS Pioneer and was shown launching from the planet's atmosphere using external rocket packs. In order for Captain Kirk and the crew to load supplies on board the Freedom-class ship, Sean Hargreaves designed a ring of large cargo doors, which were positioned on top of the Starship. This sequence ultimately did not make it into the movie, as the other creative teams decided Kirk and crew would simply beam aboard the vessel. Hargreaves then changed the doors into prominent ridges. These were supposed to represent some kind of array. Landing struts were initially designed as it was intended for the craft to be capable of ascending and descending vertically. Due to the movie script evolving, the landing struts were never shown, which makes sense when you take into account of how the ship was discovered in the Star Trek Beyond finished film. By the time this script change had happened, the name of the vessel had also been switched to the USS Franklin. This is actually named after director Justin Lin's father, Frank Lin. For example, the Starship's dedication plaque has a slightly wider gap between the letters K and L to emphasize this tribute. Furthermore, the Franklin's registry number of 326 is a reference to Leonard Nimoy's birthday. Visual effects at double negative would tweak Sean Hargreaves' design. They were tasked with adjusting the Franklin on a shot-by-shot basis. After deciding which materials would be included in the vessel's construction, the VFX team added debris they had imagined had literally overgrown the ship hull during ages it spent on the ground in Ultimate. One addition was adding dirt and rocks due to the Franklin being sat on the planet for over 100 years. The VFX team had to add weaponry to the ship, as the script had changed once again. Ultimately, members of the film's shooting company highly approved of the Franklin. The ship worked its way up to becoming a super important part of the movie, and it turned out to be a fantastic looking set. So, what do you think of a Freedom-class Starship design? Do you agree that it should have been an NX-class line of ship in Star Trek Beyond? Or do you think the Freedom-class makes sense and fits the movie? Comment your thoughts down below. If you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media via the links down below, or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.